going on, everybody? Welcome back to Think Outside the BlueBox podcast, where we feature the thinkers, the doers, the people who are out there doing big things. And today I have the honor and the pleasure of bringing back on the show the soon-to-be Dr. E Veal. Welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having me. I had such a blast the last time, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I was looking back, and the last time you and I spoke was on February 2024. It's been
Ooh,
over a year.
yeah.
And a lot has happened in AI. So I wanted to bring you back on for an update. For the people who don't know you, for the people who haven't seen the previous episode, I'm going to throw it to you. Why don't you introduce yourself, do your spiel, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Hi, I am E Veal. My first name's Erica. I'm not opposed to it. It's just that E Veal, who wouldn't go by that? And then
Right?
once I become a doctor, it's Dr. E Veal.
I love it.
So I am currently working in the AI space. So my research is in ethics. And so I focus a lot of my studies and external reading on AI ethics. And so, yeah, I am, as I said before, working on my doctorate. So I am very close, but not there just yet. And I also work with Black Girls Code in my spare time. And so those are some things that that's me. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So since the last time we spoke, I know it's been a year, how has AI evolved? It
Ooh,
has gone through quite a few changes.
yeah.
It's a lot more mainstream now. People are more
Yeah.
accepting of it. What do you think of just in general where AI is today?
I honestly, I think that it's not as far as we think it is. It is more mainstream. I think that there are more applications. People are finding more uses for it, but the actual bar for which it has moved generally hasn't really moved that much. I think that the things that we are seeing in society is just a small nudge of what has already been done in the research labs. So it's been, while we are seeing more and more things happening with the tooling, I don't think that we've really come that far. It's just that people have been able to be a little bit more creative with what it is that they're doing. Things like, for instance, deep research has been kind of going across a lot of the platforms, as well as AI agents, and those are still in their infancy. Deep research is something that, like I said, has been in the research realm for years, and it's just being like released to the public. But for things like AI agents, it's not that many things that are AI agents today, mainly because I think that the concept of it is fantastic, but the actual implementation is scary. And so people aren't really ready to take that extra step yet, just yet, to let AI just kind of run amok and like do things on their behalf. So yeah, it is gone a mile, or what we take it is what we go a mile, whatever the saying is. So it's really it's two steps forward, one step back.
Yeah, and that's with anything, right? Like any new technology, people are hesitant at first, and then they kind of try it out, but then they back up a little bit, and then eventually it just becomes so mainstream. I think we're in that process now. Why don't you kind of explain what the difference is between the deep research and the agents, for those of us
Sure.
that don't know?
Yeah, so with deep research, it's really just a more intensive, say, AI chat bot, if you will. And so it just gives you, it takes a little bit longer. It does a little bit more analytics on the back end in order to give you a more succinct and well thought out answer.
Is it
So
more
the
accurate? Like, how's the accuracy compared to?
It is a little bit more accurate, mainly because it takes that extra time to do more steps in order to get to that answer. And so there's some trade-offs there, right? So if you want something with a little bit more accuracy, a little more in depth of information, it's going to be slower because it's going through more steps in order to get you that answer. And you can kind of see its thought process, is what it's called. And it's just the thought process is just a visualization of how the model is actually trying to figure out what your answer is. In terms of AI agents, those are physical devices or operations that AI will take on behalf of the humans. So for instance, if say your Amazon Alexa, instead of saying, like we're used to saying, hey, turn on the lights and the lights come on, that's kind of an agent ish thing, but agents would go so far as to say, I need more soap. You don't even have to say that anymore. Like it'll just know like you need more soap. It's going to automatically go and purchase the soap for you, and then it'll just arrive at your house. And so that's the whole AI agent, where it's kind of like, it sounds cool, but also don't spend my money without telling me.
Don't buy my groceries without telling me you're gonna
Right.
do it.
No, no, right. Like, how am I, like, that needs to be regulated. Like, what if I intentionally just don't want that thing? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've actually incorporated AI agents into my workflow in my company. If for those of you who call the business line for Blue Box Digital, it is an AI agent that takes the call. It took a little
Hey.
bit to get it right. You know, you have to train it, you have to tell it what not to
Yeah.
do, what to do, and things like that. But it's so helpful.
It is. And so there are, and because I'm in ethics, I'm always thinking of like the negative sides of things, right? But there's the trade-off of like it alleviates some parts and it allows people that have small businesses to thrive as if they were a bigger agency, right?
A hundred
Um,
percent.
and that is the positive things that can happen, right? That you can now do things as a smaller organization that you probably wouldn't have been able to do. But on the flip side, you're now taking that job away from somebody that could have it. But it makes sense for a small business. It doesn't for Amazon, right?
Oh no, for sure, for sure.
And so those are like the things that we have to think about, where when we're leveraging it, why we're leveraging it, and like, is it really bringing you value, in the sense that, like I said, for small businesses, it's definitely bringing value, and that's mainly where you see that. But if your small business is, I'm a creator, then that might be an issue there. It depends, but again, you're a creator, right? And your creation is what you're focusing on, not the operation side of the house. Not so much, right? You are able to take some of that burden off of you and put it onto something else. And every once in a while, you'll go and check to make sure like that it's doing what it's supposed to do, that it's good. And that's that human in the loop. If you just was like, oh, they're good,
Just take
you
care of
know,
it.
and
Yeah,
it'll be fine,
hands
then
off.
that's where we're not at just yet, right? And that's where people want to be. But just think how like scary that is, where it's just the thought of it right now, just letting your AI bot, like your agent, take care of phone calls. You're still kind of like, what's going on over there?
I still listen to the recording just to make sure it
Yeah,
answered the questions right and stuff like that. That is not just making up stuff and hallucinating, which is still a
right.
thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And agencies that do that, they run into a whole lot of risk. Like recently, well, not so recently, but there was an airline company that just let their bot just answer questions. And it was, so I believe it was Canada Airline. They have this policy that if you have a death in the family, they will fly you to wherever for free. But the policy also says that you have to you have to talk to them first, and then they'll
They'll
schedule everything.
determine, yeah, if you
Yeah,
qualify.
and then they'll pay for the flight, blah blah blah. But the chatbot was like, "You go ahead and pay for it. We'll reimburse you. You're good." And so that's what they did. And when they tried to get reimbursed, the airline was like, "No, that's not what our policy is." And it was like, "Well, that's what your chatbot said." And so now it's like, "Well, who's responsible for this?" Because it was the company's chatbot. The chatbot said, like, if this was a human that said this, like, what would the repercussions be, right? You can't, they will probably fire that person, but
Yeah.
you can fire your chatbot. So, what ended up happening was it was a little defeating. I was really rooting for the little guy, but it ended
Oh,
up being, he, he got half his money, which, I
it was a
mean,
compromise.
it's a
Yeah.
compromise. It was like nobody actually won in that one, but I
Yeah.
would have been like, I would have loved it if he was just like won so much money. But yeah, but still.
Yeah, and it goes into the liability portion of the conversation because, like, as an example, self-driving cars, if they get into an
Mm,
accident, who's liable?
right,
Where does the liability lie?
right.
Because it was nobody's fault.
I'm like stepping in front of Waymos all the time. Like I'm trying to get paid.
Frogger style, just jumping in there.
Right.
All right. So
Oh.
I've kind of talked about how I've kind of integrated AI into my workflow. How have you used generative AI in your workflow?
I just recently talked about this. The one tool that I love more than anything is a note taker. Like if we're in this conversation and I'm in a meeting and it's just taking notes in the background, I love it so much
It helps you
because
focus. It helps you
it
focus on the
does.
conversation, and then you can, yeah.
100%. And especially and people probably don't realize that there are a lot of people who are, that just that are just neurodiverse, right? And they want to be able to pay attention and just in general, paying attention and trying to actively listen and take notes is just challenging on its own. But to be neurodiverse and trying to do so as well is exponentially
It's
harder.
tough. Yeah, it's
And
tough.
so, yeah, so being able to have something that, like, you can go back and it has transcribed the whole conversation. You can ask it questions like, who said this and when is this due or whatever it is. I love a note taker. Yeah, it's been the number one tool that I have used AI for. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, and I use that too, and I think I use Fathom. So it
Mm,
not only does it take notes, it gives me a summary, it gives me
mm,
actionable items, it
mhm.
links to my CRM, so it creates tasks for me.
Yeah.
So it's like having an assistant.
Yeah, yeah, it truly is. The one that I use is a small business. It's called Granola, and it does a lot of the same things. What I do like about it is that it doesn't join the conversation. So, like, if you have a Zoom meeting, or it like records anything that turns the mic on your computer, I think. And so I really like that it doesn't join the meeting because, sometimes you're just like, okay,
It's a little
it's
invasive. Yeah.
a little bit invasive. And so it's just like, yeah, I have my notes. I know what I'm doing. I can focus. I can focus up. And I'm over here trying to think of other tools that I use as much, but no, no, that's the
That's the
number one
number
tool.
one. Yeah. Yeah, no, if you guys aren't using AI note takers in your Zoom calls, it's a game changer.
Game
Absolutely.
changer for sure.
Yeah. How have you seen, let's go back to the ethics portion of it because that's your specialty. How have you seen that evolve over, the last year, the last 12 months since we last talked?
It's been interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. So the new administration has leaned into AI and has like an executive order just was signed for AI in education. And so there are some things that I would just challenge on that simply because, like I was saying earlier in the conversation, I just don't think that we're there yet to start incorporating it in a impactful way. Something as simple and not very impactful as note taking or listening to voicemails and things like that, like life changing, but like depending on how it's incorporated into education, it may be very detrimental, especially on whatever data it's being trained on, right? So the laws that are being passed and the laws that are being created today, it's very challenging simply because they understand where this technology can go and where they want it to
The
go. And
potential.
so correct. And so it's like they're trying to ensure that the law that is created today is still meaningful and useful 25 years from now. And so that's hard to do just in general, right? And it's also challenging to do because the laws that are in place today are antiquated compared to where we are as a society. So, for instance, 30 years ago, hold on, what year is this? That's not even right. 60. 60 years ago, the only organization that had massive amounts of information on a large amount of people was the government. And so they never really had to have too many laws that restricted like who can hold data on individuals. But now we have the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Alibabas, all of these big, massive companies that it is now, my data is now proprietary information for them.
Yeah.
And there aren't any laws that prevent that from happening. And so now they have to think strategically about how laws are being created going forward, and also thinking about the laws of today on how they're going to be able to curate those so that we're not having this issue. And it's very challenging because you got lobbying, you have all these things that happen pre-data, pre-internet boom, and all of this stuff that's how it used to be. That's how they used to do it. And
Yeah.
so that's how it's going to continue to go until somebody changes it. But it's very challenging to do that because it's going to impact the bottom line.
I think there's a disconnect because the way that things have been, like you said, the government works in a certain way and they take forever to pass laws. They are more reactive than proactive. And I think at the pace that the AI is advancing, it's completely outpacing anything that we have ever seen before. I mean, I have never in my life had one piece of software take over my entire life so quickly and replace Google for me. Like, I use ChatGPT for everything now, and it's like it's advancing so fast, and it's in everybody's pockets now. And I think the government's struggling a little bit to keep up. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's very true. But technology has always been like that. And when I say technology, I'm not just talking about like the digital technology. Like even when it was like infrastructure,
The internet, yeah.
everything like back way back, right? When they were manufacturing cars and things like that, when humans were just cogs in a machine, right? Part of the the industrial age, they didn't have laws in place. And so back then they had employees working for hours, right? And that's where we got
The labor
our eight
laws.
hour and weekend 8 hour work days and weekends from, because it was like that's ridiculous, you can't have somebody working this long. And so laws had to be passed for that. So it's always what's happening in society always surpasses what's going on in laws. And exactly what you're saying, like it takes so long for things to happen, but I think now we're going to have an even bigger impact, simply because one, it just took forever for laws to pass because there's just disagreement across each side, on each side. But now we're incorporating, trying to accommodate for future uses of technology, and where technology could possibly go, right? Which is hard to predict. Like, and then two, you have companies in the midst now, and they just throw a wrench into everything.
Yeah, just break it, and then the government just has to catch up.
Catch up, right? Absolutely.
Now you mentioned education and AI in education, and I agree 100%. There should be some sort of guardrails, and we need to think about what we're putting into these models to teach our children, because they're going to learn whatever the AI teaches them. So
Yep.
in China, I just saw recently that they are making AI mandatory now in education.
Ooh,
So it's part of the education system now. So
okay.
yeah, now teachers are all being replaced by AI agents.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I heard of one teacher who used AI in their classroom in a very unique way, where it was like, please answer this question using AI, but now tell me what's wrong with it. What did AI tell you that was incorrect?
Ooh, that's
And
interesting.
I was like, that's a fantastic. And so
I like
once I
that.
heard that version of it, I was like, okay, I can see AI being incorporated in the classroom if we're looking at it from that perspective. Like, yes, you can use it, but now say you write your paper, everybody writes their paper on with using AI, you switch papers now, and you got to tell me why this person's paper isn't correct. And that's just a very unique way of leveraging it. But to replace humans altogether to use AI, that is wearisome for me simply because I think that as much as we may think that we want a universal thought process, I suppose, it's your background that makes things interesting and gives it a little bit of flavor and like helps you become who you are because we're taking things away from people every single time we interact with them. For and some of the most influential people for me have been my teachers, right? And I can't imagine not being able to like look back and think like, Mrs. Bell, she taught me trigonometry and I'm never gonna forget it. And I really like this and this and this about her. So I think that while you can, like you say, you can train it to give whatever information out, we're also forgetting that the personality and those traits and those things that we learn subconsciously from people is being taken out. And so like even today with some of the youth that I interact with, I'm just like, oh wow, I don't understand you at all.
And to be fair, that happens with every generation. Every generation looks at the new generation like, I don't understand them at all.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I'm just like, and so as I'm looking at the next generation, I'm just like, I wonder what the generation before me thought.
Yeah.
What were their thought process? I'm sure they were like, y'all are not going to make it because that's what I think about this next generation.
Yeah.
You're not going to make it.
I think it's just human nature. I think we get to a certain point in our lives where anything new, anything different from how we were brought up is is scary because it's like if they don't have that same upbringing that I did for me to be who I am today, like how are they going to be, that way? But the way that I look at it is like that is their baseline. That's where they're starting from. Like they're born with cell phones in their hands, and now the new generation are being born into this AI era. Like it's gonna look completely different from what we imagined when we were growing up, what it would look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like this is their new baseline, and it's very hard for me to realize that part. And like one time I was talking to this young lady who was in college. She's like a sophomore in college. And I told her to send me a calendar invite. And she was like, I don't know how to do that. It's like
and email
what?
too. Like my daughter hates email, and that's like all I use for business. Yeah.
I was just like, oh my goodness. But I sat and I thought exactly what you said. Like, where would she have ever needed to send a calendar invite? Receive one, yes.
Yeah.
To send one, why would she ever need to do that? And I was like, you know what? Because I immediately had the, what? This is crazy. Oh my God. I had that reaction, but I had to sit and like level set myself. And then I was just like, okay, let me teach her how to do this because she's going to need it. Because people are going to expect this. And then that's when I learned, like doing Black Girls Code, that's when I learned that they don't know how to like use Excel or like know where the semicolon is on the keyboard. And I'm just like, we learned these things because they were taught in school. And maybe I'm dating myself because I said,
yeah. We're both dating ourselves here.
Right. I'm just like, it was taught in school. It was a whole class. And because it was a new software and it was kind of like, yeah, this new software might be it. And it was just like, okay, let's learn how to use Microsoft.
Yeah, no, and now with email, they email like they text. So it's all lowercase, it's all like unstructured. Whereas you and I know there's a heading, there's a body, there's a signature, it kind of like a letter, like writing a letter. They've never written letters before, so they don't know that structure that we kind of grew up with and brought into the email ecosystem with, already knowing. But for them, it's completely alien.
That's so crazy to me. And yeah. So it's not until I interact with someone that's just like, that does something like that, I'm just like, oh yeah, another generation. Got it.
Yep. We're dinosaurs in the tech age, I guess.
Right. I remember growing up thinking, I was like, I'm never going to be one of those people. No, I'm not going to be a square or whatever,
Yep, here we are.
I didn't say square, but I'm just saying, like, I would never be that person. And here I am, like, I'm not changing my ways.
Yeah. No, because I mean that's the way we were brought up, and again, once we get past a certain age, our brain is wired that way, so it's kind of hard to get out of our own habits, and we're creatures of habit. So once we get those habits ingrained in us, it's like that's who we are now.
And absolutely.
That's great. Do you see your work bridging the gap between academia?
My research.
Yes.
So my research is on is I do to answer your question up top. Yes, I do. Because my research is I'm talking to people who work at small and medium businesses to see how they're making decisions in order to implement responsible AI. So so I work at a company and they were thinking of implementing AI into their product. And so I was just like, well, like what governance are you working by? Like what,
They weren't even thinking about that.
are you thinking about X, Y, and Z? And they weren't. And so that's what like inspired me to start looking into this. Like it is not a it's not necessarily a flaw. It's just like it's a small business, kind of exactly what you were saying. Like you're a small business, so you have to adapt to what you have, your resources, because you're constrained by so many things, whether it's finances, resources, technology, whatever it is. You're constrained by what pressures you have internally or externally. And so my research is trying to identify what are those things that constrain you, and how do you make decisions in order to say yes you're going to do something, no you're not going to do something. And and if we can identify what those things are today, then we can preemptively help small and medium businesses like mitigate those before they get there, because small businesses are the ones that's making AI thrive in the US specifically. The rise of small companies has like grown exponentially since like ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, because what
And
you said, it's an equalizer, so it lets
it
me
is.
compete with the big guys.
Yes. Yes, but you still have these constraints. So you're at the
Yes.
same level ish, you know what I mean? But they clearly have more resources than you do. And so it's like there's regulations that you still both have to comply with, but they have more resources to make sure those regulations are like you are complying with them. And so I am trying to figure out like what can we do in order to ensure that we're giving small and medium businesses the tools they need in order to be on the same level truly as one of those bigger companies, so that there's no they're not competing for a whole lot of things. Because it's like even if you have somebody in your company that's really good with the tools and know how to do something, this big company can come in and just be like, I'll give you a whole bunch of money, I'll give you
I'll
$100,000
buy
more than
you.
whatever. And then it's just like, oh well, you no longer have that. And so you have issues as a small business that large companies don't have. And so you have to make concessions in a way that they don't have to. And so being able to bridge that gap between small businesses and these larger businesses when it comes to responsible AI, because if these small businesses are popping up all over doing AI, we're leaning on them to ensure that their product is going to be responsible. Sometimes you got deadlines to meet and you may have to cut a corner or two, but it's just like, what are those things that's forcing your hand so that we can try to find solutions so that that doesn't happen?
Do you think that the gap is not necessarily getting bridged, but just getting raised? Because these bigger companies are also using AI, so they're
Mhm.
also raising the bar. So it's like, how do you see the industry as a whole?
So they that's a very good question, and I can see that the small businesses are leaning on these larger companies because they're not building their models individually, right? There's some type of federated version of it. What I mean by that is that a larger company, they have the big pool of data, and then the smaller company have their small pool, but then they reach back and forth to grab the data that they need so that they're not mixing their data in. And they're just leveraging something that the larger company has. And so they're still requiring like these bigger companies to have whatever regulations and compliances and all of those things. And so they're kind of piggybacking off of those organizations. But you're right. The more that the bigger company gets bigger, There's going to be more people that want to attach to it. And so it's going to be a fighting, I don't want to say a losing battle, it's just a fighting battle. I think that the gap, a small business will never be on the same level as a large business, period.
Yeah. No, agreed.
It's just like then there will be a large business. But it's closing the gap of like how they compete with things. And so that's what I'm trying to help them do, because they're already fighting just as a small business, whether it's AI or not, they're already fighting for resources. And so
For survival.
and that's all it is survival, sustainability, just trying to be able to be in the game. And it's just like, what are the things that we can do in order to help them stay in?
Now, what do you think about these jobs that are being replaced by AI? Because it's inevitable. Some of the
Yeah.
like the data entry and just the what is it, the minimum wage jobs, those are all being replaced. What do you think? Are these people having to adapt to this new world? Are they finding AI empowering to get better jobs, or like how do you see that playing out?
I think that if you're not already making sure that you are future focused, that you're future proof, then you already had a problem in the first place. And I just mean that in a career sense, like regardless of what industry you're in, if you're not thinking about your sustainability in your career for the future, while I understand some people like it's working, it's fine, I don't want to fix it, blah blah blah. Especially if you're in an industry like you said, like what is it, data entry. If you're doing something like that, you had to hear the rumblings that this thing is coming,
It
and
was
so
coming.
you should be doing something in order to like to upskill yourself, right? But that is true for any time in history. There have been jobs that just have been replaced. We no longer have certain jobs because machinery has taken over, right? We don't have carriage drivers anymore. I mean, we have some, but that's
Yeah.
for entertainment
No,
purposes,
and we,
right?
we don't realize that the word computer used to be a
A
person.
person,
It was a person. It was a job title. So now
right?
that got replaced by
A
machines, and we call
machine.
those computers now. So yeah, I agree.
Every iteration, and this just mainly because it's happening to us today, like,
Yeah, we're
or it's
living through it.
we're living through it, or it's even something that's just it's just so big that it's happening like to everyone. And I think that and it's not like a slow roll type thing, because even when, like you said, we replaced computers, humans, it was a slow rollout, because that was Jesus, it was like 60 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, right? Where it was like it was happening, but because we didn't have the technology so that everybody was aware that it was happening, it only happened like in your community, and then it rolled into another community and another, and it took us a while for it to happen. But this right here is kind of like it feels very instantaneous because we just have access to a lot more. But it is not a new concept. It's happened before, but also while yes, jobs are being eliminated, jobs are being created, right?
Agreed.
Podcaster never was a thing,
Yeah.
wasn't even a word until 30 years ago, right? And so we have to think about it in that sense, because while there's bad that happens, jobs are being eliminated, good is also happening, where there's other means of income and there's other ways to get those skills. And now, because of the age of technology, you can upskill yourself quicker than you would have, and more cost effectively than you would have been able to years ago.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. I think one of those jobs that's actually going to be replaced, and people need to start thinking about it, is truck drivers.
Ooh, I am weary, but go ahead.
The self-driving cars are here. It's inevitable. They will eventually get good enough that nobody's going to even touch a steering wheel. I think with Tesla coming out with the self-driving semis, I think that's a telling sign that sitting in a truck for 12 hours is not going to be a thing anymore. You're going to have
Yeah.
to adapt your skills somewhere else. So, and I see that all throughout the industry. Anything that's very mundane, everything that can be replaced will be replaced, I believe.
I think that they will try. I don't think that it will come as quickly as we think. Because while, yes, we are on the precipice of like all these self-driving cars and things like that, one, the cars don't go on the highway. And just
Yet.
think about, correct, but think about cars that just jump in front of semis today. Like, how would a automated vehicle do that if it can't see it, right? Like, because there's blind spots. Like a truck can only see but so much, right? Even if it's automated, it has sensors everywhere. And so I'm not confident that it will happen like in the next 5 years. That's and again, I'm on the ethical side of things. I'm always like negative, but I do think that exactly what you're saying, like things that are repetitive, mundane,
Yes.
that and especially truck drivers, it's a very dangerous job, especially now that like there's a lot of time constraints that's like forcing them to go faster for longer distances for longer hours and things like that. That's very dangerous for them to be on the road. And I can see it in a positive sense of like, let's make sure that they're safe. But now they have to reskill themselves because if you're just like driving all the time, like,
Yeah. What other skill do you have? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure they have other
Yeah.
skills, but it's like leaning into whatever that other skill is. And then also it depends on what stage of your career you're in. It's very challenging to like change to something else. Like you're not going to be a programmer after being like a truck driver for years. You can be. I'm not going to
You
stop you
can, yeah.
from doing it,
Especially with AI.
especially with AI.
You could be a coder now. Like I've coded my own apps and I'm not a coder. So, yeah.
Congrats. Nice.
Well, speaking of coding, you mentioned Black Girls Code before. You're very involved in that. Any updates? What, have you guys incorporated AI, or has AI come into the workflow to help the code? Like, how does that kind of worked out?
There has been a few workshops. What they're doing now with Black Girls Code is that they're trying to give more well-rounded skills as well. So there are workshops for blockchain, AI, things like that. But then they also have this new leg where they're trying to ensure, like I said, they're well-rounded. So how to network, how to, build your resume out, things like that. And I think that those are kind of like we were talking about before, where there's sometimes we're so focused on the things that we didn't get as kids that we forget about that piece that we need in order to like bridge the gap, or things that we realize. So I'm giving a talk in a couple of weeks, in like 2 weeks. It just like hit me. Like I was like, oh,
It's coming
it's
up.
been like, right. And like 2 weeks to talk to the girls about how to network as an introvert, which is something that people don't talk about. It's like everybody told you to network network, but what if you're just like, I don't like people?
It's a thing.
It's a
It's
thing.
a
So
thing,
yeah.
especially with the new generation. They're so, I don't want to
Yeah.
say antisocial, but they're not as social as,
Right.
our generation was. And so they
Yeah.
lack that.
They have a different version of social. Like I went to my brother's house, and my niece, she was on the phone. She had her headphones on, and I was like, "Who are you talking to?" She was like, "My friend from school." And I was like,
So they're still
"What, your friend?"
social, but
Right, but I'm just like, "You're playing a video game." She's like, "Yeah, she's over there on the phone." I was like, "What? She's on camera?" And she was like, "Yes, the camera was facing the ceiling." And the friend was just on the phone. And I looked, and the friend, she was like doing her homework or something. And I was like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Like, I would have hung up the phone a long time ago. I'm
long
looking at
time ago.
a long time. I've been looking at the ceiling for 5 minutes. Goodbye. Not doing this. But that's again, going way back to your point, like that's their
That's their
baseline. Like that's
baseline. Yeah.
normal for them. And when we used to just sit on the phone and not talk,
Yeah, no, to them, a phone call is just a FaceTime where they just
Yeah,
set the
just a
phone
few
aside,
times.
looking at the ceiling, you know?
Yeah, looking at the ceiling. We were just sitting on the phone, just like not doing nothing, just listening to each other breathe. So yeah, it's just a new normal.
We are really dating ourselves here.
And
We're like tech dinosaurs over here. So let's talk about the future then. What trends do you see that are emerging that are you're optimistic about, and what are you not optimistic about? That's
you
coming.
already know. No, so let's talk about optimism. I am very optimistic about AI and research. Um, that has always been my favorite part of where AI can do the most good. Just being able to get to answers quicker and to do research quicker. Let me tell you about this PhD. Like, I can't imagine people reading a whole bunch of papers and like you're trying to pull out these
Hundreds,
hundreds of
hundreds
papers
of papers. Yeah,
trying to like deduce this one thing from all these things when you could just throw it into AI and just say, summarize it, give me the advantages, disadvantages of everything. Where do these papers conflict? That works so that I can do the real work of whatever else I'm doing over here. And so that's what I truly do love about where the future of AI is going. If we can use these tools to solve real problems. And when I say real problems, I think a lot of the things that we do in society aren't real problems, right? I think that things like how can we reduce how much energy we're using when we're using AI? Like, I would like to solve that problem. That is a major issue.
it's a huge issue.
So big.
Yeah, there's already power grids that are maxed out because these data centers are just gobbling up tons and tons of energy.
Yes.
I've seen actually a couple of documentaries lately that said that some of the bigger tech companies like Amazon and Microsoft, they're actually
Mhm.
investing in nuclear power. They're reactivating these old nuclear plants that just to power the AI, which is I think it's a good thing, right? Like nuclear is, clean energy and things like that. I think if we can get them off the grid and into their own self-sustaining
Yeah.
ecosystem, I think that might be the solution.
And I think that um, it is great that they're looking at that part, that they care about that part,
It's because
that
they
they're
have to.
focusing on it. And now, whether they have to specifically because they care about humans,
Oh
I don't
no,
think
that's
so.
that's
Right?
just an unintended consequence. I think
Right.
they need the power and the grid isn't
They,
enough.
Correct. They need sustainability, and it just
Yes.
so happen it helps the humans. And so let's focus on this over here so that it makes it so we sound like good people, which is fine. Whatever. Like, I'm here
Whatever
for
it
it.
takes, yeah.
Whatever it takes sometimes. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to is like AI solving real world problems. Not looking forward to the destruction that it causes to undeveloped countries and the fact that we're just ignoring that that's happening because we get to put everything in chat gpt or whatever, and I'm saying this as a hypocrite, right? I'm
Yeah, you're using it too.
right, I use it all the time. I was just saying, like, I love the note-taking app, but it's really like we need to also realize that it's not just us that we are the recipients of this, but there's someone that's taking like the hit of it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what I think.
I kind of share your sentiment as well. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that will be answered in the next decade. I think there's a lot of science advancements and medical advancements that will happen. I think that we're going to find cures for a lot of things. I think like protein folding and things that just were not possible before, I think are possible now, especially with quantum computing. Microsoft, I don't know if you saw, they just came out with their quantum computer, and it's going to be a game changer. Like it's going to be something that they can produce mass and in mass, and researchers can use,
Yeah.
to deep research some of these things that have just literally never been able to because we just don't have the compute power.
Correct.
Something that would take a computer nowadays centuries to solve, it can be solved in less than a day, you know, in about an
Yeah.
hour. So I think in the next 10 years, I'm very optimistic. I know there is going to be unintended
Yeah.
consequences,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's just inevitable with any innovation that happens this quickly. There is going to be, unfortunately, groups of people that are going to be impacted by it, but yeah, hopefully we as a species we can come together and say, you
Yeah.
know, let's fix this, or this is
Yeah.
happening, let's figure out how to not let it impact those people.
And I think that it's good that you and I are, for a very lack of a better like analogy, we're two sides of the same coin, right? Where you're highly positive about it and I'm like highly negative.
Let's be a little
But
skeptical about it.
but the thing is, it's necessary, right?
Hmm.
It's necessary that we have somebody that's like, no, 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 no. Look, this is how wonderful it can be, and like think about it. Like think of like you forced me to say the positive that can come out of it, right? But also, you know that there's negative consequences to things, and like keeping that in mind as you're doing the positive things, like having it's important to have both sides, and we just happen to lean more to one side than the other, and as long as the people that are working on these things can keep that balance. And I think it's a good balance. I think it's good that I'm learning from you positive ways that AI can be useful, and you're learning from me ways that we need to be a little bit more cautious about the tool. And today I truly see it as a tool. I don't see it as replacing anything.
Agreed. I
And
think it should be seen as a tool. I think it should be used
correct.
as a tool to empower ourselves, not to
Correct.
replace humans.
And I think that that's where the disconnect is for a lot of people. They don't see it as a tool. They see it as a replacement. And whether that person that sees it as a replacement is the person that's like building it and is in charge and really trying to get to this like godlike AI thing, or you're somebody who is in one of those jobs that is being replaced by AI, and now you're thinking, oh, I'm being replaced by AI, but it's really a tool that you need to figure out how to leverage in order to get to your next step. And so, yeah, today, and I'm sure at some point, my thought of AI may not be just a tool, but today it's a tool. It is just as handy as a hammer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we should have another update in a year.
People think it's a
Let's do
thing.
this again. Yeah, every year we'll just, what's the state of AI, you know?
AI, I love it. Yeah, I'm here for it. Let's
That's
do it.
amazing. Evil, what's next for you? What's coming up? I know your doctorate. You're gonna get your
Yeah.
doctorate coming up in June. And what's next for you? What's your research and what are you doing?
So, yeah, I actually just yesterday got approved to actually conduct my research. So I'm excited. My goal
Nice.
was to be done by June, but it's looking more like end of summer. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
And honestly, right now, I haven't really thought too much more past that because I'm just like, the next time
You
you
gotta
see me,
focus.
I'm going to be Dr. E Veal, right? And then I'm gonna probably go to an island where some man who ain't got no shirt on is gonna fan me and hand me a mojito.
It's gonna be one of those Tesla bots, you know, with AI.
Oh man, one of those Boston Dynamic dogs just coming
Yeah,
over.
bringing you drinks and stuff.
Just
Heck
bringing me
yeah.
drinks. Hey, whatever. I'm gonna be somewhere, and then that's when I'll start thinking about like, how am I going to use my research? How am I going to use my platform in order to like elevate and do other things? But because that's truly what I want to do. I do want to um, move forward and find some way, even if it's just like speaking to the youth, other organizations, whatever it is. I really want to get the message out there so that people know like that there's this balance that we were just talking about. There's a balance between the good and bad of AI, and that we should think of it as a tool.
That's amazing. And we're gonna end with that. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time, and keep doing what you're doing. As long as you know want to be on the podcast, I'll keep bringing you on, and we'll keep chatting away. Yeah, I love this.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I know that, you could be anywhere, but you chose to spend some time with me, and I had a blast. I always have fun with you. This is great.
Likewise, yeah, you could have been anywhere in the world today and you were here with me. So I appreciate that. And hopefully, you guys get the message that there is good, but there's also bad with AI. And we need to be a little bit more thoughtful about how it's being implemented.
Yeah, absolutely. All
Thanks
right then.
again, Eviel.
Okay, until next time. Bye.
Alrighty.